What's going on, fight fans? I'm back here with another video here set for you guys. Gonna be giving my in-depth breakdown and predictions to the UFC 319 pay-per-view card that's going to be headlining this Saturday that we have coming up. Thankfully, this card is absolutely stacked. One of the best cards head to toe. A lot of sneaky fights that we have on the prelims that are actually pretty good. Usually, most of the DDP pay-per-views that he's headlining, those cards are usually trash. But with Khamzat being on it, obviously, you got to prep it up a little bit more than what it usually is. And starting off this card, we have Alibi Idris versus Joseph Morales. Undefeated prospect Alibi Idris makes his UFC debut, has been a champion in other promotions, has the Kazakhstan background. You already know how those type of fighters are fighting, like the Shav Cats, like the Alsu Amabayevs. We're getting the takedowns, we're getting the mix in. Another brother type of style of fighter. We have Joseph Morales, who had a previous UFC stint beforehand, where he had a victory, and then after the victory, he got KO'd by Davison Figueiredo, and then lost to Eric Shelton by split decision. Like, okay. And since then, he's won 3 in a row. He's been on the regional scene, but he's been quite inactive on the regional scene after this. I think this one is going to be Alibi Idris getting his UFC debut victory, getting the things that he needs to be able to do in terms of the takedowns, in terms of the strikes. I mean, he's gotten some KOs on his resume as well. I'm going to go with Alibi Idris on this one. Joseph Morales just seems to be a regular journeyman that gets back on the UFC whenever he's back on a win streak in his career. And now moving up the card, we got Garin Silva versus Dion Barbosa. Garin Silva is coming off a decision loss to Viviane Araujo. Very close, but Araujo just overall just beating her up, especially with the grappling and her not having an answer for it. And Dion Barbosa is coming off an arm triangle sub that she had in her last outing that he had in that she was going against. But she also lost to Miranda Maverick, who is on a little win streak, but just recently lost to Rose Namajunas. This one I think is going to be a regular WMMA fight where it might be back and forth and maybe pretty competitive. But I'm going to go with Garin Silva on this one. I believe and trust in more her abilities in the stand-up. I think she's more diverse on the stand-up. And in terms of the grappling, there's no worry in terms of Viviane Araujo coming back her way like Dion Barbosa. And I'm moving on up the card. The most sneakiest, underrated fight on this card that I actually think will be a banger. It is Nursultan Ruzaboyev, who's on a 2-fight win streak as of right now. Ever since his jump up to the middleweight division, he beat Eric McConkey, however you want to be able to pronounce his stupid name, and Dustin Stolfus. Not the greatest of names, but necessarily needed uptick in terms of him moving up from the welterweight division. His last time out, him in the welterweight division, he was going against Joaquin Buckley, and he got beat up in that one. And Brian Battle is on a 5-fight win streak. If you want to count the no contest with Angelusa, I absolutely do. He was absolutely putting a beating on him. And his last win that he got in his streak so far, he got a win over Randy Brown, which it was very muddy, very back and forth. A lot of people think Randy Brown should have got the decision over that one, and he got robbed. I seen it a different way. I think he did the better overall clinch work and had the dominating positions in the second and third round. To each his own. But he missed weight, and he missed weight badly, trying to be able to get that weight cut down to the welterweight division. So now he's bumping up. He's making his way to the middleweight division, and this is a nice, good, tough competition. Ruzaboyev is pretty solid on the feet, can be able to mix in terms of the takedowns. I think Brian Battle is overall better and has a diverse range of attacks on the feet than Nursultan Ruzaboyev. I'm going to go with Brian Battle on this one. I just believe more in him than I believe in Nursultan Ruzaboyev. I wouldn't be surprised if Ruzaboyev did get a victory in this one, just simply relying on the grappling and the takedowns and just making it very muddy and boring in there. He could get a decision victory over Brian Battle, but I wouldn't say I'm on a hype train, but I'm on the road with Brian Battle as of right now. I don't think a guy like a Nursultan Ruzaboyev is beating him right now on the streak that he's in, especially in the middleweight division. I think he can be able to nullify some of the takedown defense coming his way that Ruzaboyev, I think, is going to implement with his grappling game as well in this one. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Brian Battle on that one. And moving on up the card, we got the battle of the OGs, the battle of the Unks, Edson Barbosa versus Drakkar Klose. Edson Barbosa has taken about a year and a half off. Nice little layoff after his loss to Lerone Murphy, where he looked almost damn near washed, damn near out of there. A lot of tread. 39 years old, been in the UFC for damn near a decade, or has been a decade already so far. And Drakkar Klose is coming off a KO loss to Joe Alvarez. I mean, it was like the time of coming. Joe Alvarez has been on an absolute tear. But beforehand, he was on a 4-fight win streak. He did look pretty okay before he got finished in that fight against Joe Alvarez. As much as I love Edson Barbosa and I think that he can be able to pull out a victory over a guy like Drakkar Klose, I'm going to go with Drakkar Klose on this one. Again, both of these guys are both old OGs. I just think that, yes, while Drakkar Klose did get knocked out in that fight against Joe Alvarez, he was looking okay. He was looking pretty decent. And again, before that, he was on a 4-fight win streak. Edson Barbosa, he took a year and a half off, and maybe that is going to be able to be good for him to be able to rejuvenate, maybe get his cardio up, recover for all the injuries and all these things that nature. But I mean, time is a ticking, and Father Time does not lose to anybody. As much as I love Barbosi and I want him to be able to get the victory, I'm going to go with Drakkar Klose on this one. Moving on up the card, we got Randy Orton versus Alexander Hernandez. Chase Hooper, a.k.a. the Legend Killer, who's been on a legend-killing streak as of recently. Alex Hernandez also himself is also on a winning streak, 2-fight winning streak as of right now, over Austin Hubbard and Kurt Halabaugh. Similar type of middle of the road fighters, just like Alexander Hernandez. And Chase Hooper, like I said earlier before, he's been on a legend killer streak as of right now. He's been beating guys like Vyacheslav Borshev, Clay Guida, Jim Miller. He's stacking his resume with names that are older, out of their prime on the shelf. And I think guys like Alexander Hernandez fits the bill for what the streak that Chase Hooper is on as of right now. So I think Chase Hooper is going to get the job done with the grappling, be dominant, and show off that striking that he's been working tirelessly, I would want to be able to say, because first off in his career, his striking was very much so garbo. But he's been working on it. It looks a lot better. It looks a lot more crisp and a lot more fluid than what it was looking beforehand. So I'm going to go with Chase Hooper on this one. Just overall bullying his way to victory over Alexander Hernandez. And I think he's actually going to sub on this one. And moving on up the card, now we got Jessica Andrade on the door of retirement. Somehow still ranked number 5 in the strawweight division. Obviously because she carries power, name value, yada, yada, yada. Versus Olupi Godinez. So this is a good matchup making for the UFC finally, if they ever made one. Obviously, they made one in the main event, so there's another strike for them. Jessica Andrade right now is on a 2-fight losing streak. She's lost to Natalia Silva and Jasmine Desudavicius, 2 gals that are absolutely streaking heavy right now. And Lupe Godinez, she's coming off a decision victory over Julia Palostri. First time for her to be able to get back into the winning streak. Before that, she was on a 2-fight losing streak before. Jessica Andrade, the names that she's been beaten up by so far are actually names that are really good and have future potential to be title contenders and title holders in that strawweight division. Obviously, Zhang Weili is the absolute woman in that division. But just overall, and especially in her last performance against Jasmine Desudavicius, Jessica Andrade just looks like it's about time for her to be able to think about retirement. She got really whooped on and had no answer for Jasmine Vicious. Not to be able to say that Lupe Godinez is the same way. She doesn't really have that type of grappling. She's more of a boxer type of style. She uses her kicks every now and then, but usually most of the time things are getting done with the hands. Favors more for Jessica Andrade, who's a little bit better equipped to be able to do things with her striking ability that she does have, and she's pretty okay and has good power, especially her being one of the heavier hitters ever in the woman history in WMMA. But I'm going to go with Lupe Godinez. I think Jessica Andrade was washed. I think she is not the fighter that she was beforehand. Maybe she does come out for this one and has a pretty good performance. And especially with it being a striking battle with Lupe and not going to the ground at all, it favors her more and she has more opportunities to be able to land more of her power shots. But I just think that it's time for her to really, really consider retirement. And I think Lupe Godinez is going to force her into that by probably punishing her and pummeling her face over and over in this matchup. Now moving up the card, we got a hidden member of the Fighting Nerds, Mikhail Olenchaychuk versus GM3. Another sneaky, pretty decent matchmaking matchup on this card. And we get into it. GM3 is on a 2-fight losing streak as of right now. To Reiner de Ridder and Brad Tavares. Pretty much of the norm of what we get out of GM3. He's a submission threat on the ground. He's really good with his BJJ. His stand-up is very, very simple and rudimentary with the jab, with the left hand down the pipe, and some kicks here and there that can be effective. And Michelle Olenchaychuk is coming off a TKO victory over the woman beater himself, for Cedric Dumas. I'm going to go with Michelle Olenchaychuk. I just think that he's a better overall fighter than GM3. He has a lot more to be able to offer, especially on the feet. He's an absolute problem. And anything that GM3 is going to be able to throw his way in terms of striking, it's not going to be an issue for Mikhail Olenchaychuk. Maybe on the ground there's some problems that Mikhail can be able to worry about, but knowing his tank-like ability, he doesn't look the greatest in terms of his fitness, but he is a strong and durable individual. And before he got the victory over Cedric Dumas, he was on a losing streak, but it was very, very competitive, the matchups that he had beforehand, like against Sharon Magomedov, Kevin Holland. There's another guy that he was in there that he lost to as well, but it was very much so comp, right? I'm going to go with Michelle Olenchaychuk on this one. I think he gets himself on a winning streak, and I think he's a level above a fighter like a GM3. So I think he's actually going to get a KO on this one. Moving on up the card, we got. And also, I don't want to be able to forget, but I do think that him working with the Fighting Nerds has been able to elevate his game. Now, moving on up the card, we got Bobby Green versus Carlos Diego Ferreira. Bobby Green right now, he lost 3 out of his last 4 by finish. Last time he got highlight kicked KO in the jaw by Mauricio Ruffy, and he was left flat and out cold. And Diego Carlos Ferreira lost to Grant Dawson by decision, where he pretty much got out-grappled, but on the feet, Ferreira is still a problem, even at his old age. Another OG type of matchup, another Unk Fest type of matchup we have over here with some valuable names in terms of veterans in the UFC. I'm going to go with Carlos Diego Ferreira on this one. I think he's going to knock out Bobby Green again. His chin seemingly is gone. His durability is wasted away, withered away. And while Bobby Green can be very flashy on the feet, he can be able to do his things and remain very fluid and look pretty decent every now and then. He just can't be able to take punishment the same way that he was beforehand. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Carlos Diego Ferreira on this one. And now moving on to the main card opener, we have Tim Elliott versus Kai Asakura. Tim Elliott, last time out, he submitted Sumadarji about a year and a half ago, so he's been very inactive. take some time off of his career to be able to rest, recover, and do all these things that he needs to be able to do to get himself mentally prepared to be able to get back in there. Kaya Sakura is coming off an RNC loss to Alexander Pantoja. Nothing to be able to be ashamed about on that one. Tim Elliott is a tough cookie. He's pretty much the litmus test, a Neil Magny of such sorts in the flyweight division. If you get past him, you can be able to move up in the rankings and be able to do better things and get better matchups. But if you lose to him, then you're you're lower ranked than him. You're barely just ranked, or you're pretty much just unranked as of right now in a very, very deep and heavy flyweight division. I'm going to go with Kaya Sakura on this one. I think that he has, while he doesn't have the grappling and wrestling advantage, I do think that on the feet, he's a lot more explosive. He's a lot more dynamic. He can be able to throw things at Tim Elliott that while Tim Elliott is a pretty good striker within his own, I don't think he's at the level of what Kaya Sakura is, and I think Kaya Sakura needs this victory a lot more than what Tim Elliott needs as of right now. Tim Elliott he can be able to still meander around the way that he usually is as of right now in the flyweight division. I think Kaya Sakura, you can be able to use his name, get more matchups, better suited for him, and you have this flyweight division flourishing a little bit better, especially when you have him in his name in the mix. And now moving on up the card, we got a very, very easy fight to be able to predict. This fight is only going to go two ways, okay? If this stays on the feet the entirety of the fight, MVP is going to win. MVP is going to school Jared Cannonier. I don't care how much power Jared Cannonier has. I don't care about his technique. I don't care about his timing. I don't care about any of these things. If Jared Cannonier goes into the mindset of trying to be able to knock out MVP in this matchup, it will not happen. MVP will walk circles and make Jared Cannonier look like a fool in there if he just has that mindset of just going in there and staying on the feet. Now, if Jared Cannonier does do the thing that I actually do believe that he will do, which is mix in the wrestling, mix in the grappling, get takedowns, get MVP tired, make him a lot more slower on the feet, a lot heavy, more pace, worried about the grappling exchanges and the takedowns and all these other things that are going to be coming towards him. Listen, MVP made Shermagomedov, a very technical and great striker on the feet, look like an absolute fool. And if he's doing that to him and Kevin Holland and Ian Gary, even though he lost to Ian Gary had to resort to grappling to be able to beat MVP. I don't think Ian Gary is the greatest of grapplers, even though he's working on his grappling and BJJ and wrestling and takedown. Jared Cannonier has a background in wrestling. He can be able to rust up on that, even though he usually doesn't even use that, honestly, throughout the entirety of his fights. Again, Jared Cannonier coming off a great comeback victory over Gregory Rodriguez, where he was literally down and out, and now he's back himself in the picture, number 7 or 8th ranked, wherever he's at right now in the division in middleweight. Still one of these old heads that are still lingering around. Another litmus test type of guy, like a Tim Elliott, like a Neil Magny. If you get over Jared Cannonier, you're kind of up towards the rankings, and now you can get the other prime in their ready type of contenders that you're true. And if you don't, then you're still kind of like down the peg of the division that you're in. And obviously, Cannonier's in the middleweight division. I'm going to go with Cannonier on this one. I think he's a smart dude. I wouldn't be surprised if he wasn't smart and lost all the IQ points that he's been having and going on, because before the Gregory Rodriguez fight, he was like on a 2-fight losing streak before that, getting hurt badly by Barajo, getting absolutely demolished, and now when Gregory Rodriguez put a beating on him too as well. Again, if this stays on the feet, MVP 100% is going to win. But I think Jared Cannonier is smart enough to be able to know that he's not really good in terms of the grappling and wrestling, and mixing in the takedowns really is the key to be able to beat MVP. And I think Jared Cannonier will get the job done. Now moving on to the feature fight on this card. We got a fight that will absolutely deliver, a matchup that was rebooked for this card specifically. Jeff Neal versus Carlos Prates. Jeff Neal is coming off an absolute domination of Rafael Dos Santos. While RDA got retired because of an injury, Jeff Neal was absolutely putting a whooping on RDA. Carlos Prates is coming off his first career UFC loss to Ian Gary, where he damn near finished him in that fifth round. But for the first 3 rounds, Ian Gary was taking control, using the jab, using the kicks and footworks effectively, and he got the job done against Carlos Prates, which I think is going to be a very good experience thing for Carlos Prates to be able to use for himself in the future against matchups, maybe again a rematch, maybe like Ian Gary or another fighter similar to the style that they're going to implement that Ian Gary used against Carlos Prates. In this one, there is no Ian Gary person that you have to be able to worry about. Jeff Neal is going to be in your face. He's going to be using his boxing, and he has some power in those shots that you definitely need to be able to be worrying about. The only thing that really sets me up for this one that I think Carlos Prates is going to be able to knock Jeff Neal out unconscious, something that really hasn't happened at all, I think, in his career. He's lost, I think, by submission and obviously by decision beforehand, but I think Carlos Prates is going to put him out cold. I think the loss is going to be able to reinvigorate himself, get himself back on track. This was the matchup that was supposed to be booked up for Carlos Prates in the first place, besides obviously the Ian Gary matchup that he had against him. And I just think that the styles mesh in within each other very well. But I think this is a very favorable matchup for Carlos Prates. The longer, rangier fighter, keeping him out on the outside. While his boxing defense isn't good, he does have a pretty good chin. Don't know if that's going to hold up with Jeff Neal's power, because Jeff Neal's power is absolutely 100% for real. But I just think that the other effectiveness in terms of the tools of using the kicks in that southpaw stance, specifically the knees, the elbow when closing into the range, I think will be a lot more effective in terms of the blows and the hands that Jeff Neal is going to be able to use. And I think eventually Carlos Prates will find his number and find the button to be able to shut off the lights for Jeff Neal. And I think Carlos Prates is going to get a knockout on this one against Jeff Neal, looking similarly to how he looked against the Leech Ling Zhang Liang, and getting another victory on his resume, boosting him up again in the rankings and getting that hype behind him once more again. And now moving on to the co-main event, we got a very tough fight to be able to call, because we have Aaron Pico making his UFC debut finally after they booked him for so many times against Movsar Evloev. He's now matched up against Lerone Murphy, another undefeated prospect on a winning streak as of right now. Lerone Murphy, a different type of style of fighter from Movsar Evloev, where Evloev seemingly just relies on his boxing, which is not all that good, and just really his dominant grappling and wrestling game that he has. Lerone Murphy is a different type of guy where he's just all around, just well mixed in. Similarly, a type of like a Leon Edwards, where Leon is a lot more, I think, technical on the feet and a lot more smoother than Lerone Murphy, but just overall has a very well-rounded game where he's not real dominant in every real thing. He's just very good in every single area, and that's pretty much what Lerone Murphy is. Aaron Pico has a wrestling background where his wrestling game is very dominant, very aggressive, real good boxing, has power in his hands, and the UFC is pushing this guy to the absolute moon, where he was doing his thing in Bellator, and then in the PFL he had a couple of fights, but now he's in the UFC. He's in with the big boys, and he's in with a guy like Lerone Murphy. Well, I'm not going to say Aaron Pico is to the levels of a Josh Emmett. He's similar like ilk to a Josh Emmett, in my opinion. Explosive, high power, good wrestling that he's able to rely on, but really just wants to be able to do a lot of the damage of work with his hands. And I think Lerone Murphy is going to get a similar type victory that he did against Josh Emmett, even though Josh Emmett is a lot more older and washed than what Aaron Pico has right now. So maybe that's something that you need to be able to worry about, where Pico's a little bit more in his prime, a little bit more explosive, kind of similar type build of like a Michael Chandler. And, maybe he's just going to be able to catch you with one of these shots, and then that's pretty much going to be it. That's the way that I think Aaron Pico is going to be able to get a victory over Lerone Murphy. But I just trust in Lerone Murphy. He's been there, done that. He's beat guys like Edson Barbosa, Dan Ige, Josh Emmett. He's been in there guys with had, similar types of power like an Aaron Pico. So he's been around, had training camps, and done things around similar guys like an Aaron Pico. So he has what he needs to be able to do and has the tools to be able to get things done. And I think Lauren Murphy is going to stay undefeated in the featherweight division and get a decision victory over Aaron Pico. And now on to the main event. We got, besides Tom Aspinall and John Jones and Ilya Topuria versus Islam Makhachev, in my opinion, the most anticipated matchup to be able to see and make, now going to be able to happen this Saturday. Dricus du Plessis versus Khamzat Chimaev. An absolute banger of a matchup to be able to make. And one of the best matchups to be able to make the entire year, in my honest opinion. I've made my video about what does it mean to their legacies, about DDP and Khamzat Chimaev, and what it means for them in their future as well, in their careers, and how they go on and prolong themselves, and all things of that nature. So I'm not going to be able to get into that because I've already did that in my video about a week ago. So if you want to be able to see that, a more detailed, in-depth break about what I believe will happen for them in their respective careers if they do come out with a victory in this matchup against each other, that being Khamzat or DDP. I'm now just going to be giving a, skill for skill, what I believe will happen prediction in this matchup. Dricus du Plessis, we already know what he's done so far to be able to get himself to the title belt, being undefeated in the UFC, getting wins over guys like Darren Till, Derek Brunson on his way up, and then finally getting a big one over Robert Whittaker, then beating Sean Strickland for the belt after he just beat Israel Adesanya, arguably one of the pound for pound or best middleweights of all time, then going on to beat Israel Adesanya in his return fight back, where Adesanya was very much so under the fire and had a fire lit under his ass to be able to try to be able to get a victory over DDP, submitted him, and then in the second rematch against Sean Strickland, absolutely demolished him and nullified anything Sean Strickland wanted to be able to do defensively or offensively. Khamzat Chimaev, we know what he is. Absolute Mike Tyson of the UFC. First round, he's coming for your head. Whether it be a knockout, whether it be a submission, usually it's a submission. And he's getting that takedown, and he's just shooting in so quickly that there's not much that you can be able to do around him. Having wins in the war like Gilbert Burns, and getting a nice victory in that very dominant first round against Kamaru Usman, where a lot of people were talking about it potentially not being a 10-8 round. Could have went Usman's way, could have been a draw, neither here nor there. He got the victory over Usman respectfully in that matchup. Then you have Robert Whittaker, where he absolutely snaps the jaw off, where Whittaker was on a 2 or 3 fight win streak beforehand, and he just came off a KO against Ikram Aliskerov, and Whittaker seemingly is back into the fray of the middleweight championship contendership. And Khamzat Chimaev, man, if you think Khamzat is going to win this fight, you think that he's going to do to DDP what he's going and has done to every single other person besides Gilbert Burns, and that's absolutely run roughshod on them, make them super uncomfortable, make them panic and not know what to do, and leave themselves open for an opportunity to get submitted or ground and pound to death. That's what you're thinking about if you think that Chimaev is going to win. And if you think Dricus du Plessis is going to win, you think that he's going to weather a storm, get over the first round, get his bearings within him, and then eventually set on and put a pace on Khamzat Chimaev, who's had himself some cardio issues that he's dealt with, showcased in the Usman fight after he had that absolutely phenomenal first round. Him himself, DDP, also before getting the championship bout, dealt with some cardio issues himself and how he breathes and how he was dealing with issues with his nose beforehand. This fight is very competitive because it is a 50-50 fight. Favorite odds are going to Khamzat. DDP is plus money to be able to put on him as the defending champion who's already had 2 title defenses on his reign. I'm going to go with Dricus du Plessis on this one. Somehow, someway, Dricus du Plessis just finds a way to be able to win. whether it be mixing in the grappling and the BJJ. I'm not going to say that he's on that type of level of wrestling as a Khamzat Chimaev. He's definitely not as aggressive. He's definitely not as just threatening and just cutthroat as Khamzat Chimaev is. But I definitely do rely and think that his gas tank is a lot better. I think his striking, whether it be very unique, awkward, and ugly to be able to look at, it is very effective. His power is for real. So is Khamzat Chimaev, but I do think that DDP does have an advantage in terms of the striking on the feet. I just trust and know that somehow, some way, Dricus du Plessis is going to be able to find a way to be able to win this matchup. Khamzat Chimaev has never been in a position where he's been uncomfortable, even though he's fought against very very high comp in terms of Whitaker, in terms of Usman, in terms of Burns. He's got the job done. But against a guy that's streaking right now, that's a defending champion in his prime and peak as of right now, just absolutely nullifying him and running roughshod against DDP, who is built like a tank and a powerhouse himself. I don't think that he's just going to be able to bully his way into a victory. I just can't see that, especially against a guy like Dricus du Plessis. I don't think du Plessis would allow that. And I don't think not only would he allow that, I just think that Khamzat just couldn't be able to do it. Khamzat is a strong dude. Khamzat has bullied a lot of other dudes that are big dudes, and they've been bullied to other guys. Yes, those things have happened. But we'd have yet to see Khamzat Chimaev in a very tough and precarious position. We have not seen Khamzat be in positions, besides maybe the second round against Burns, where he's losing rounds, or he's just getting outbeaten and getting hit hard. And how is he going to be able to deal that against a dude like Dricus du Plessis, who doesn't know anything else but to win? All these factors go into it, and I just think that I don't think that Khamzat Chimaev will get exposed, but I do think that the things that he's done to other people would eventually get done to him, and especially in this fight against Dricus du Plessis. Both of these guys are very strong, well built, and I think just the mentality and knowing such a powerhouse that Khamzat is in terms of grappling and wrestling and BJJ, I think Dricus du Plessis is going to be well equipped on this one, and I think he's just going to be keyed in as of right now. And if he does win this fight, he is for sure the middleweight GOAT, without a doubt. There's nobody on Anderson Silva's resume or Israel Adesanya's resume that is close to the peak prime Khamzat Chimaev as of right now. Like this video. If you obviously like this video, comment your opinions on what you think is going to be able to go down on UFC 319. And what are your predictions of what you think is going to go down on this card? Who you got in the main event? You yourself as well. And subscribe. Subscribe. You're a UFC fan. You're an MMA fan. You're here. You love it. I'm way better than everybody else that's pushing out and grinding this content as hard as I'm doing as right now. Even though I'm talking very stupidly right now, you're still here and you love it. Thank you guys again for watching again. And peace.